Hello and welcome to another video from the only source of information that you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy it. And today we're going to be discussing whether or not the Bible teaches that the earth is flat. Recently, Ala Toledo and I spoke about the significance of the flat earth teaching in a SustenanceNCovering podcast because one of our listeners left a message asking us to explain our understanding of several Bible verses that are regularly used by the flat earth community as proof that the Bible supports a flat earth model. In that message, he stated that he believed that the spherical earth model was part of Satan's plan to manipulate people into believing that the earth is round as a means of feeding into the agenda of steering people away from God and towards the teachings of science. Recognizing the fact that Satan uses science as a means of drawing people away from God is very important, especially as civilization nears its end. The religions of the gods have done such a poor job of answering life's big questions that many will turn to science simply because it seems to make more sense to them than what is offered by the churches. All religions serve the same purpose: to support and elevate the status of those worshiping the God of civilization, while at the same time making those who worship the Creator seem foolish. All religions require their adherents to believe in things that are obviously not true while denying things that are true. That being the case, science, by definition, would be a religion. Like many religions, science teaches some very easy to prove basic things that are obviously true, things that most people already believe. But science also teaches things that require years of study that most of us are not willing to or able to invest our time and resources into, and equipment that most of us don't have access to or can't afford. Fortunately for us, many teachings of science, just like the teachings of any other religion, are so obviously false that we don't have to invest a whole lot of resources into examining them. That being said, it must be acknowledged that all religions have the same agenda and function in a similar way, and by definition, flat earth is also a religion. If you have done any research into the teachings of the flat earth community, you have already likely discovered this for yourself. Flat earth teachings, just like the teachings of all other religions, include things that are obviously true, which many people already believe. Teachings that many of us do not have the time or resources available to check into for ourselves, as well as teachings that are obviously false. There is nothing in the Bible to indicate that God punishes people that are tricked into believing in foolish things. If that were the case, we would all be in some very serious trouble. But at the same time, we are quickly approaching the last days, and understanding the basic way that our world works, which includes a basic understanding of how the earth is shaped, may make it easier for us to make life and death decisions about what actions to take as this world, this so-called civilization, nears its end. There are many aspects to both the flat earth model as well as the spherical earth model that could be compared in order to determine which of the two most closely resembles how our solar system actually functions, which would reveal how our planet is shaped. Today I am only going to be addressing the scriptural aspects, since that is the nature of the question from our listener. In the future, I will try to address other aspects. Jesus is not the only Bible character to speak of the end of civilization. From the earliest books, the Bible promises to one day restore God's kingdom and rid the earth of Satan and all who support his rulership. Throughout the scriptures, the promise is made that the great day of God the Almighty will be the means by which God accomplishes this. One of the most significant aspects of the Lord's day is repeatedly spoken of as signs in sun and moon and stars. Jesus confirmed that this would be the case. Luke chapter 21 and verses 25 through 28 says that when we see these signs beginning to manifest themselves, there will be two completely different ways that people will react. At verses 25 and 26, Jesus said that many will be so frightened that they will faint from terror after witnessing those signs in the heavens. The word translated as faint is actually apopsycho, which means that they will commit suicide. But at verse 28, Jesus says that when we see these signs in sun and moon and stars, we are to lift our heads erect, knowing that our deliverance is near. The point being that as civilization nears its end, there will be notable changes in the celestial bodies that are visible from our planet, and people's reaction to those changes will be significantly different depending on how we interpret what we see. The two different reactions that people will have is described in other ways at other verses. At Matthew chapter 24:15, Jesus speaks of one of those signs as the abomination that causes desolation. Some versions of the Bible refer to it as the disgusting thing that causes destruction. But in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 30, we are told that immediately after those days will come the sign of the Son of Man. Both of these signs are part of the same signs in sun and moon and stars spoken of earlier. It is imperative that we understand which is which. The Bible very clearly indicates that the vast majority of mankind will get these two very different signs confused. Some will raise their heads erect, knowing that their deliverance is near when they see the abomination that causes desolation, but cower in fear when they see the sign of the Son of Man. We do not want to be part of that group. We must not allow ourselves to be tricked. Since both signs will involve the celestial bodies that we can clearly see in the sky, it would be wise to at least understand to some extent what the nighttime sky looks like currently so that we can recognize those changes when they occur. Something else that is going to be very important is understanding at least the basics of why those celestial objects look the way that they do. Much of what we see in our sky involves the shape of our earth. In other words, if any of the celestial objects that we can see from our vantage point here on the earth were to drastically reposition themselves in any way, what we would be able to witness from the surface of a flat disk would be radically different from what we would be able to witness from the surface of a sphere. In our Bibles, Jesus was asked on several occasions just what we should expect to see during the last days, and although rather cryptic, the answers that he gave were very precise and detailed. As time goes on, I will eventually share just what is revealed in his responses as recorded in God's Word, the Bible. For now, you just need to know that when those signs begin to manifest themselves, those who are currently being fooled into believing in a perverted version of how our solar system functions will likely continue to be fooled and never even recognize those signs for what they are. If the currently accepted model of our solar system is in error, then perhaps something recorded in God's Word, the Bible, can be used to get a more accurate understanding. The first verse that our listener pointed out to us is in Psalms chapter 104 and verse 5. He set the earth on its foundations so that it should never be moved. According to the King James Version, he laid the foundation that it shall not be moved forever. This particular verse may not sound as if it describes the shape of the earth. However, the concept has become an important part of the flat earth doctrine. The Empire says that the sun is the center of our solar system, meaning that it would be the sun that is firmly set in a foundation with all other objects in our solar system orbiting around it. If in fact it is the earth that is firmly set in a foundation, that would lead us to believe that everything actually orbits around the earth, including our sun. It is actually quite reasonable to believe that if in fact the earth is the center of the universe and the Empire is lying about it, then that would be a pretty good indication that they were in fact lying about the shape of the earth as well. The word currently used to describe how our solar system works is heliocentric, meaning that all of the celestial objects in our solar system travel around Helios, which is the Greek name for the sun. The word used to describe the flat earth model of our solar system is geocentric, meaning that all celestial objects would move around the earth. There once was a time when many of the established religions taught that the earth was the center of the universe. Anyone who even suggested that this was not the case would usually incur civilization's wrath, with consequences that were often quite severe. In order to determine if that is what this verse is about, we're going to have to take a detailed look at this verse as it was originally recorded in ancient Hebrew. First word that we'll be looking at is the word translated as foundation. In Hebrew, this word is makon, which comes from the related word kon. Kon means prepared. Makon means prepared place. In English, the word foundation is usually used to indicate a fixed position, such as the foundation of a house. The foundation of many houses is a concrete slab or foundation wall, both of which are obviously designed to be fixed in place and permanent. Hence, most people would instantly associate the English word foundation with something engineered to never move. The King James Version of this verse says that God laid a foundation, an obvious reference to the foundation of a building. Although a foundation is very obviously a prepared place, the two ideas are not identical. A prepared place does not have to be fixed and permanent, and in fact, the second word that we're going to examine is the one that is translated as the phrase, shall not be moved. The word is mote, which is used 39 times in the Bible. Most versions of our English translations of the Bible seem to consistently translate this word as shall not be moved. However, quite a few verses use this word to speak of things that obviously do in fact move. At Psalms chapter 55 and verse 22, we are told to cast your burden on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. Here the word mote is used to describe people who do what is right. It should be obvious that all people move whether they are righteous or wicked. The verse in question cannot possibly be about righteous people being fixed in a permanent location while wicked people are free to move about. Simple logic would lead us to conclude that this verse, although describing something which makes good people different from bad people, would not be about a permanent, fixed, physical location. Other verses that use this word say that God cannot move. Once again, this cannot be about a fixed point in space. In speaking of God, the Bible says, should I go into heaven, there you would be. Should I go down into the depths of Sheol, there you would be also. Two obviously different locations. It could be argued that such verses are simply highlighting the fact that God is everywhere, but it cannot possibly be describing the Creator as immobile. The Bible even speaks of the temple in Jerusalem as the makon, or foundation, where God dwells forever. It should be obvious that God cannot possibly be permanently fixed in position in the temple. That building isn't even there anymore. There is no reason to believe that how these words are used at Psalms chapter 104 and verse 5 are somehow linguistically different from how they are used elsewhere. Saying that God has prepared a place for the earth from which it shall not be moved could mean that God created this solar system for our planet, just as He created the earth for people. This verse could very well be used to describe the earth as being immobile, as taught by the flat earth religion. But it could just as easily be describing the orbital path of the earth around the sun, as taught by the religion of science. Psalms chapter 104 and verse 5 does not support either the heliocentric model of our solar system or the geocentric model of our solar system. It simply supports the fact that God is the one who put the earth where it is. The next verse that seems to be used by everyone that subscribes to the flat earth teaching is found at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 7. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. Several English versions of the Bible use the word firmament instead of the word expanse. Once again, this verse has nothing to do with the shape of our planet, but describes something that conflicts with the accepted teachings of the scientific community. A teaching that, if disproved, could severely discredit all teachings of science, and hence its teaching about the shape of our planet. I have been told by several people that believe that the earth is flat that we all live beneath some kind of dome. The feature that some Bibles refer to as the firmament supposedly is that dome. I don't know if all flat earthers subscribe to this teaching, but do know from the many links that have been sent to me that the belief is popular. The Hebrew word is rakiah, which literally means the spread out space. This is easy enough to prove with nothing more than the Bible, because once again the word, just like the previous Hebrew words that I already spoke of, is used multiple times throughout the Bible narrative. Immediately after placing the waters above the firmament and beneath the firmament, Genesis chapter 1 and verse 18 says that God called the firmament heaven. The word heaven is used throughout the Bible, and none of those verses indicate that heaven is solid or that heaven is shaped like a dome. If we look at other verses where the word rakiah is used, we can confirm that the firmament is heaven. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 20 says, "Let the birds fly in the open firmament of heaven," literally above the face of the earth, within the open space. This verse could be describing an area just beneath a dome, but not likely the dome itself. Revelation chapter 19 and verse 17 speaks of an angel commanding all of the birds that fly in the midst of heaven. These seem to be actual birds, not figurative birds, as they are commanded to eat the dead bodies of those killed at Armageddon. It isn't just the birds that are said to be in heaven, but Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14 says that the lights would be in the firmament of heaven, those lights being the sun and the moon. That being the case, we can assume that heaven, or the firmament of heaven, are one and the same. I have always thought that the firmament was simply our atmosphere, but upon closer examination it seems that the firmament is all of the space that exists between the solid masses that make up the celestial bodies in our solar system. There are words that make a distinction between the part of the expanse associated with our atmosphere and space in general, but the word that gets translated into our English words, expanse and firmament, simply mean open space. Even though the waters are said to be beneath the expanse as well as above the expanse, this concept does not exist in the original language text. The word that is translated as above is actually al, spelled A-L. Although such words as above, on, and over are used hundreds of times in the Bible, this particular word is only used 48 times, and even though Bible translators render this word as above in several verses, there isn't really any reasonable explanation as to why they would choose to do so. An obviously more accurate rendering of the Hebrew word al would be within. This verse is not about waters beneath the expanse and waters above the expanse, but waters beneath the expanse and waters within the expanse. These waters could very well be the waters that make up the clouds, but as recorded in our Bibles, I don't think that is what is being described at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 7. In my studies of the Bible, I have discovered that quite a few verses seem to speak of some kind of feature that at one time existed between our planet and outer space, just not as described by any religion. Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11 says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month of the 17th day of the month, on that day all the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of the heavens were opened." A more accurate rendering would be, "On that day the great deep water source was broken up when the window of heaven was shattered, as if it had been struck." You can check this for yourself by simply using a concordance to look up the definition of each Hebrew word used in the original language text. There is a huge difference between opening a window and shattering a window. If the flood of Noah's day was in fact caused when this so-called shattered window fell to the earth, then it would be impossible for that dome to still be there in place. In fact, all references to the window of heaven are about either a time before the flood or the time after Christ's return, which describes it this way. At Revelation chapter 4 and verse 6, it says, And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. What is actually said is, before the throne there was a hard, transparent sea. Since the phrase hard, transparent sea includes the same Greek word used when speaking of seas on earth, we can assume that this hard, transparent sea is made up of water, just as the seas on earth are made up of water. Frozen water could very easily be the window between earth and outer space. A hard, transparent sea. Probably those seas would be the waters within the firmament as described in Genesis, not the firmament itself. Since the dome is no longer there, even though the firmament is, then it is reasonable to conclude that the firmament is, in fact, the space that exists between all celestial objects, or as Genesis chapter 1 and verse 18 says, the firmament is heaven. Which leads us directly into the next verse that I was asked about, which also describes something that could very obviously be a dome. Job chapter 37 and verse 18 says, Hast thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong and as a molten looking glass? The English Standard Version says, Can you, like him, spread out the sky as hard as a cast metal mirror? In fact, quite a few English versions of the Bible incorporate this concept of a mirror. The actual word used here in the original language is ray, which means glass for looking. But it wouldn't be accurate to translate this word as glass for looking at yourself, which is what a mirror is. The simple concept of a glass for looking through is all that the word rai could possibly represent. The Hebrew word rai is very similar to our English word ray, as in ray of light. This verse is very obviously referring to the creation count of Genesis, specifically about the creation of the dome, and would not contradict the Bible teaching that the dome was destroyed in Noah's day, hundreds of years after creation. Although this transparent barrier is spoken of many times throughout the Bible, none of the accounts reveal anything about the shape of our planet. Such a feature could exist over a flat earth, but such a feature could also surround a spherical earth. Another verse that I think needs to be brought up as long as we're talking about the shape of the earth is found in Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 22, where we are told, It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain, and spreads them like a tent to dwell in. I have heard this verse brought up many times over the years in defense of the spherical earth model, and never questioned it because I trusted the preachers who referred to this verse and trusted the English translations of the Bible that rendered this verse in this way. But once the flat earthers started to regularly contact me, I thought that it might be a good idea to examine the verse more closely. The word that we translate as circle would be better translated as encompass. This word in Hebrew is chug. It is closely related, if not identical, to other Hebrew words that are translated as surround, keep, and riddle. It's as if it is trying to say that it is he who sits above the riddle, mysterious thing, or unknowable thing that surrounds, encompasses, or keeps the earth. In its original language, this verse, just like all of the others that we have examined so far, does not and cannot be used in defense of any doctrine involving the shape of the earth. There are several other verses that seem to describe the shape of the earth, but all of them, just like the ones that we have discussed so far in their original languages, do not in any way seem to support either the flat earth doctrine or the sphere earth doctrine. One example that is found in several verses in both the Old and New Testament is the use of words that are traditionally translated as corners. One example is found at Revelation chapter 7 and verse 1, which says, After this I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth, that no wind might blow on earth or sea or any tree. The Greek word used at this verse is gonia, which would be better translated as cardinal points, primary points, or perhaps points of significance. The Hebrew equivalent used in the Old Testament is kanaf, which also means cardinal points. These words, as in the case of all of the other scriptural examples that I have spoken of so far, do not support any kind of doctrine related to the shape of the earth. But when taken in the context of the Bible overall, in fact, they may. In modern English, we think of our four cardinal points as north, south, east, and west. These words are closely related to the ancient words used in the Bible to describe the cardinal points, but not in every case. North, south, east, and west are not points, but are directions. A person could be said to travel in an easterly direction, but could never be said to be at the easternmost point on planet Earth. On a spherical Earth, there are two obvious cardinal points, north and south, which would be associated with the north and south poles. But as our planet currently functions, there are no naturally observable cardinal points associated with the directions east and west. In the ancient language that our Bibles were originally recorded in, the words north, south, east, and west represented the concept of direction, but oftentimes words that are translated as north, south, east, and west represent specific points on our planet, cardinal points. The most obvious example of this is the word east, which is sometimes translated from the word Mizrach, but other times translated from the word Kadem. Both words are found at Exodus chapter 27 and verse 13. Mizrach, like our word east, is directional. Mizrach means towards the rising of the sun, which is very similar to our English understanding of the word east. But the other word, Kadem, actually means front, as in front of the earth, a very specific location. What could be considered a cardinal point. The word yam, which often gets translated as west, actually means sea, and is a direct reference to the sea mentioned at Genesis chapter 1 and verse 9. Our word north is normally translated from the Hebrew word saphon, which actually means hidden or treasured, as in the hidden place or the treasured place. South comes from the word negeb, which can mean conspicuous place or place of soft soil. Most believe that the sea that is associated with the cardinal point of west is the Red Sea, and the conspicuous place or place of soft soil associated with the cardinal point of south is the Negeb region of the Promised Land. But in keeping with the fact that there is no explanation for why east is associated with the front of the earth, I believe that these four coordinates would be describing some other sea in some other conspicuous place of soft soil, areas that would have been associated with the back and bottom of the earth, the treasured or hidden place being associated with the top of the earth. So on a spherical earth, those four cardinal points would be the top, bottom, front, and back of the earth. Currently, we can only speculate about where those areas are, since the Bible records that how our solar system currently functions is not the way that it functioned prior to the flood. Our Earth is not oriented within our solar system as it would have been at creation. In any case, only a spherical Earth could be said to have cardinal points that would match the north, south, east, and west of the Bible. In a flat Earth model, north, south, east, and west don't seem to represent anything. Currently, the entire outer edge of the flat Earth model is considered south. The center of the flat Earth model is considered north, and east and west simply don't exist. I have seen some rather bizarre explanations about how such things could work in a flat Earth model, so this issue has apparently been addressed. Supposedly, the land beyond the Antarctic Circle is square, meaning that the angels holding back the four winds of the earth would literally be standing at the Earth's corners. Even though this may sound preposterous to most of us, it is the explanation that is traditionally presented. And since the only agenda that I had when producing this video was to talk about direct scriptural references to the shape of the earth, then by limits that I myself set, all that I can say is that nowhere in the Bible does it specifically say one way or another how the earth is shaped. That doesn't mean that understanding how our earth is shaped or how our solar system functions is inconsequential or beyond our ability to figure out on our own. There is still the issue of preparing ourselves for the day when the signs in sun and moon and stars begin to manifest themselves. I can promise you that each and every one of us can gain a very clear understanding of those events long before they take place, and we will be the only ones able to do so. I produced a Bible series a while back called Written in Stone. In that series, I explained many parts of the Bible that have been a mystery to mankind for hundreds of years. Much of that information is specifically about the signs in sun and moon and stars. I am currently working on a series that will go much deeper into that subject. Please, do not allow Satan or any of his minions to confuse you about what you have learned thus far or about what you will be learning in the very near future. If you have gotten this far, you can't give in to religion now. The time left remaining is very short indeed, and according to Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12, Satan knows this better than anyone. While Muslims are leaving their faith in order to attach themselves to Christianity, Christians are leaving their faith in order to attach themselves to science. There is not enough time remaining for us to engage in such foolishness. All religions can be exposed for what they are through simple observation. As time goes on, I will speak more about the shape of the earth. In this video, I limited myself to discussing only Bible verses that are specifically presented as proof that the earth is flat, and Bible verses that are presented as proof that the earth is spherical. In upcoming videos, I will not be bound by such parameters. I promise you that anybody alive who is interested in understanding how our planet is shaped and how it relates to the sign of the Son of Man can figure it all out using nothing more than simple observation and a little common sense. I can also promise you this: anyone found still clinging to religion when Christ returns will suffer for it. When the abomination that causes desolation makes itself manifest, we do not want to be among those who are found bowing down to it. When the sign of the Son of Man makes itself manifest, there is no reason for us to be found cowering in fear. If you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.